I graduated the academy in '94, and I spent 2 years in the South Boston Barracks. I broke in there and stayed there, and then I was transferred to South Yarmouth. I was there for, I think, approximately 5 years. I transferred into Crime Scene Services in Middleborough. That was in 2001. Then I transferred to Crime Scene Services, at the time it was in Agawam, in 2006, and then in 2007 we moved to Springfield. In 2007, I was promoted to sergeant. In 2014, I believe, I was promoted to lieutenant, transferred to the Northampton Troop B headquarters. I was a duty lieutenant there. And then staff inspections a year after that. And then I was the harassment investigations officer for the department. Under Colonel Grenham, I was promoted to captain, and I became the executive officer of the Division of Standards and Training. In 2016, I was promoted to major of the academy, and then in 2017, I was promoted to colonel. I think all of them, for me, it was just a great experience. It was over 25 years, and I remember being interviewed to get into the academy, and it was a panel of 3. And they said, why do you want to be a state trooper? I said, because I really want to help people. And they're like, yeah, that's not a good enough answer. Everybody says that. I said, no, I really do. And I think I've tried to keep that with me for my 25 years, just being out there and helping people from the road, which is our biggest division, and arguably, some would say, our most important function, to Crime Scene Services, helping victims. That was very near and dear to my heart. And I think being the colonel and helping to shape the job moving forward. So I think they really all were important to me. One, I was a security guard, and I was working in Braintree, and I was commuting to Springfield College. And a lot of security guards, at least then, wanted to be state troopers. So state police tests had come about, and everybody that I worked with encouraged me, you should take the exam. And I said, yeah, I don't want to be a state trooper. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew I didn't want to be a state trooper. So that's sort of one story, and out of all of us who had kind of taken the exam together, I was the only one that passed. So that didn't go well where I was working. And then the other story I think that circulated out there, when I was 16, my sister was kidnapped and murdered. And I think there was a lot of unanswered questions for me. So when I was 24 and I got on the state police, I actually had no idea that there was anything other than the road trooper, because it was a job that I didn't necessarily. Some people, I think, aspire, I want to be a police officer, I want to be a state trooper in particular, but I had never aspired to be that. So I never really looked into it, never gave it the time and attention it deserved. So fast forward, now I'm on the state police, and in the back of my head, I know I'm not allowed to work on my sister's case, and it was still unsolved. But I always wanted to sort of help families so that they didn't have to go through what I went through. And I think that was a big part of me applying and being transferred into Crime Scene Services, and I stayed there from 2001 to 2014. I remember being in high school and taking, I believe it was called the ASVAB test, and I must have done well because they continued to call my house, and for whatever reason I didn't go in that direction. There's a part of me that wish I had, but I didn't. So I went to college for a couple of years at Springfield College, and due to financial constraints, I wasn't able to continue. I got on the job when I was 24, and I was encouraged by everybody that I worked with. You got to go back to school. You got to get your education. You got to get a degree. So I went to Western New England College, sort of the off-campus program, and got my degree in criminal justice. I remember being in Crime Scene Services, and I can't remember the year, but Bob Daddio was on call, and we thought at the time it was a gentleman who had disappeared. And there was some stories that maybe there was some Alzheimer's involved. So in Crime Scene Services, when you get to what we call an unattended death, You have to take photos, search the area, make sure it's nothing more than it appears, and then once the medical examiner gets there, a lot of times you'll lift up the shirt in the back, make sure there's no stab wounds or gunshot wounds or something like that, and then you roll them over. Same thing, lift up the shirt, make sure that there's no injuries that are inconsistent with unattended death. When Bob Daddio was at this, what we thought was an unattended death, when he rolled the body over, it was a homicide. And so he called me out to that. I went, assisted him with that. Fast forward, and I'm not sure how long it had been, but a young man had not come home after his shift working at a restaurant in Plymouth. And I remember, I grew up in Plymouth, so I actually remember watching the news thinking, this is really odd. And his family was pleading, anybody have any information, please let us know. And I'm not sure how long after that, but I was on call, and we got a for what we believed was the young man in the woods, and it was tough. It was tough. And I think maybe a week after that, they had made an arrest, and this particular individual was holed up in Vermont, and we sent the state police air wing to go and retrieve him. And they brought him back to Plymouth, and I just happened, Middleborough, the Middleborough barracks, and crime scene was in the basement at that point, and they asked me to come up and fingerprint him. And he had murdered 3 people, 2 in Massachusetts and then 1 in New Hampshire. And 3 murders is considered a serial killing, and it was probably really tough scene, but I felt that we had assisted the family in bringing home their son.